Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to the I'll Try That podcast. Today's pursuit of hoppiness sees us battling with a British amber beer by the name of Bombardier. However, first, with the small matter of a hop topic to tackle. And Simmo, you're going to hit us with some knowledge about beer and man's best friend, right? Beer and dogs. Hit me.
Yes. Yeah, named Nectar of the Dogs. See what I'm doing there?
Nice.
Yeah, thank you. I did take it from the website, so it's definitely not all.
Mate, it was the way you read it. You read it superbly, yeah. I must say.
Oh yeah, thank you. So what I find massively intriguing is, essentially this has come from Busch Brewery, which is from Anheuser-Busch. So it's the VP of Anheuser-Busch, Daniel Blake, has came out with this statement. He's brought a beer for your dog. So it hasn't got any hops or alcohol in it. What a shame! But it is made from a bone broth, which sounds fantastic.
Oh yeah!
And it allows you to crack a beer with your furry friend, and it has pork. Okay, so I love the fact that the first thing. Oh my god!
Are you okay?
So
I hope this is good.
No, I've just realised that I'm just going to have to read this out. So it has pork butt. Sorry, I'm such a child.
It's just the word,
pork
just the word
butt, corn, celery, basil, mint, turmeric, ginger, and water. And they said, humans can sip the beer, but you may find it pretty bland. The website urges. I love the urges. It's like, just don't. They're basically saying, I know you want to, but just don't try the dog beer.
That's a polite way of saying get away from it if you're a human being. But not bland. Surely there's quite interesting flavours in there. It sounded a little bit spicy at one point.
Yeah, and I love the fact that they also go, it's in the pop top can, and it can be either used as a refreshing treat or to soften harder food. So they're saying, obviously, you can pour it for dogs with bad teeth.
Yeah, if you've got dry kibble, maybe a bit of in there. So the pop top can is that something that's so easy that the dog can open it themselves if they can get into the fridge?
Yeah, that must be it.
They've come home from a long walk up the woods, chasing pheasants all day. I could just do with a hearty bone broth.
I love the fact that they also they've realised that loads of people are probably going to buy this thinking, right, don't need to give them dog food, because they've also said we do stress that it is not a meal replacement, and that you should not. And I love this as well. I love how many bases they have to cover being such a big company, because they don't want to get sued blatantly. Is you should not actually give your dogs beer.
The thing is, the human race can only move as fast as the slowest participants, can't it? So if anyone was not aware, and I'm sorry if I've offended anyone who listens to this, please don't give your dog beer. And if you were thinking about doing it, why were you thinking of doing that?
Don't do it.
But
it's amazing.
Yeah, there's a safety net here that actually, if you were thinking about doing that, there is a specific product. Please don't give them alcoholic beer.
Yeah. And but I do love this is this is so sellable.
Yeah, definitely.
You crack a beer and you're like, do you know what? I want to give the dog a beer, and I can actually now give him a beer that is safe for him to have. That's not going to mess him up or make him fall over or whatever they do. As you can tell, I've never gone around giving dogs beer. So
yeah, would you describe yourself as a dog man though? I didn't realise it was such a heavy question for you. Sorry.
This is a very heavy question because it's a big debate in my mind, because from 0 to 18 I had cats in my life that lived until 18. Colin and Rose. Big
Great
fat
names.
cat Colin. Colin is literally the best cat. I said he had undeveloped muscle. Others may differ.
With you. Okay.
Rose was beautiful, and I love cats. I absolutely love them. But my parents have recently got a dog, and she is absolutely mental. She's amazing. called Jazz.
Nice. What breed?
And she's a Kelpie cross Doberman, maybe.
Right.
So
okay. Yeah.
Very energetic.
Yeah.
And then I've also now in Australia with a little tiny dog called Milko.
Nice.
He's a Maltese.
Yeah.
But the problem. So I'm not sure if you know about dogs that well, Barbara. I'm sorry if you do, but he has white shaker coat syndrome, which is really common supposedly with dogs that have white fur, and he shakes like all the time.
Oh right, I didn't know that was a thing. As much as I'm familiar as I am with dogs.
So, and he is hilarious. He is very old, and he is just the funniest little thing in the world. And he's half blind, half deaf, and he's just hilarious. He fills your time, and so I think I'm becoming
a dog man.
A dog, yeah. So, what about you, Barbs?
Definitely. To be honest, actually, just of late, I'm almost maybe moving the other way. I'd love to have a cat, but in fact, my family, when I must have been probably between the ages of 0 and 5. It was a cat that we had, the Barber family had. We used to have hard as nails tabby called Worthington.
Oh, what a name!
He lost an eye in a fight, but he was also like there's pictures of me as like a 3-4-year-old toddler. He's sat. My dad's got his feet up on a coffee table, and Worthington is having a kip on his like the leg bridge. And there's a little picture of me poking him on the nose and then rubbing my face in his face. And despite being like gruff, old, hard as nails cat, he was also then very good with children as well. But equally, since then, my family, we used to have a couple of Springer Spaniels. I haven't got a dog in my life these days. But we used to have a couple of Springer Spaniels who equally used to bounce off the walls. Holly and Fred. One named after Christmas, the other one for a cricketing legend in England.
Okay, fair.
So, I would be buying. I'd probably consider getting doggy beer, but the thing is, I know it's a dreadful source for any kind of information, but I did see some, in terms of dog treats out there, I did see something recently also. Someone put it on Twitter. That's what I'm saying when I say dreadful source. Apparently you can buy cow hooves. But there's a story going about at the moment about someone who bought what they thought was a sensible quantity of. It was basically there was a bit of a price on weight, and I mean, I wouldn't judge anyone for not knowing how much a cow hoof weighs. But they went, okay, well, maybe it was like £3 or £4 or something like that. They thought, oh well, yeah, that's maybe a sensible amount of cow hooves to buy for my dog. Ordered it, got it delivered, 50 cow hooves. Turned up with this person's front door. What on earth are you going to do with 50 cow hooves?
I mean, it doesn't surprise me that you can buy it, because if you go to an actual butcher's, you can get every part of a beast.
Yeah.
Like, you can get every part. Sorry for vegetarians out there, but you can just go to a butcher's and you can get everything, right? So it doesn't surprise me, but I mean, buying online, that's the risk.
In 2021, anything's possible.
Yeah, exactly. And also, this is going to sound really weird, but you telling me about a cat with one eye, I'm just thinking of a Scar and Watership Down with that rabbit.
Oh no! This is a far more pleasant beast than that. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I can't remember the name, but
do you know what? That is back in the past. Watership Down.
Yeah.
Anyway,
you're talking 90s. Although I told someone not too long ago about Worthington, and they went, "Oh, that's original," and I went, "No, that's Werther's rather than Worthington." But Worthington's is a beer. Maybe that's one for a future episode.
Actually, Worthington's is a hell of a beer. But anyway, right. So, what are we talking about? We are supposed to be talking about Bombardier or Bombardier.
The French version would be Bombardier.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Zut alors.
So obviously we're going to swiftly swing in the pursuit of hoppiness, where we're going to talk about Bombardier. Now, its recent advertising is the British Amber Beer, and they're really kind of pushing that at the moment. Now, just start with, in 2006, Wells and Youngsbury was founded, and in 2011 it became Charles Wellsbury. Now, this is all whilst Bombardier was brewed. So Bombardier's been around for a decent amount of time. So it's kind of well established. And what I find really interesting is it became Eagle's Brewery when it got bought by the beer giant that is Marston's. Okay, and Marston's bought it. This is Charles Wells Brewery, or what is now Eagle Brewery, for £55 million. And Marston's actually changed the name to Eagle Brewery, so that's how it changed its name.
And this is this is in Bedford, isn't it? So
yes.
it's
Yes, it is.
always puts me in the mind of late in the evening saying I'm up the wooden hill to Bedfordshire. Sorry, really tenuous link, I know.
No, you go for it. So what I find really interesting is Marston's changed the way people look at it. So Bombardier for me was always linked with England. Bombardier for me was always had the English symbol on it, and it was kind of really prominent on the bottle, and it always had English beer. So my remembrance of Bombardier is it was actually advertised as the English beer, and it had St. George's flag on it. However, due to the takeover, it now is the British beer. And I think, so from what I've read, I actually read a few articles about this. A lot of landlords were getting a bit annoyed about it because they felt, why are we changing it? Because is it bad to be English, sort of thing? And I think sometimes there is a bad connotation with the St. George's flag. But it's interesting how I think actually British beer kind of suits Bombardier because of the alliteration.
Well, it's a small point, but yeah, definitely valid. I suppose this is just a way of being more inclusive, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. But I mean,
let more people share in the identity.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we should talk about the word Bombardier. All right. So this is a massive put you in your place, Barber. But do you know what a Bombardier is?
So it's army related. I can tell you that much.
Congratulations.
So I think someone maybe told me about this also, that there's a difference also between, because there's a lot of ways in which different countries' descriptions of their military roles change. So actually, Bombardier might not be the same in, say, French, if it was Bombardier. But it's not. Basically, it doesn't necessarily mean someone actually involved in bombing. It is a rank, isn't it?
Yeah. So traditionally, it was a rank of a non-commissioned officer in artillery regiments. So,
okay, yeah.
So if you're thinking,
because
so you're probably thinking of like 17th, 18th century cannon
Napoleonic Wars,
yeah, sort of thing. And then, however, if you look more modern. But like potentially, if you look at, for instance, in the US Air Force, it is somebody who releases the bombs. It's part of a bomber crew. But for English sense, you're thinking, especially with this beer, you're thinking Napoleonic War. You're thinking Sir Richard Sharp. You know.
Oh yes,
Bernard Cornwell's writings. I love it.
I just saluted if anyone helps.
Just literally instinctly. He didn't. It was literally just like, I have to salute.
Richard Sharp was a load of rubbish.
Do you know what?
How do we explain Sharp?
No, what's Richard? No, hang on. Who's the guy who did Richard? Sean Bean.
Sean Bean.
Sean Bean. Before he was famous for dying and everything, did something called
where he didn't die.
Where he didn't die, and he was
lived
a legend
all
in
the
it.
way.
And he basically made just to put it in perspective, this is a book based off the Napoleonic Wars. But by a guy called Bernard Cornwell. And they are one of the best books that I've read in my lifetime. I've got every single audiobook and I absolutely love them.
Fair play. Bernard Cornwell. Again, sorry, big tangent, but have you done The Last Kingdom? Go and do The Last Kingdom as well.
Oh, yeah,
that's brilliant.
Yeah. So basically,
anyway.
This guy is very famous for doing historical stuff around Britain. So if you are interested in Viking, medieval, and Napoleonic history... And he also does sea warfare as well. If you're interested in that sort of stuff, Bernard Cornwell is your man. And this links really well to Bombardier because Bombardier is directly linked, especially with their adverts in the early 2000s, 2010s, with linking it to that time frame of the Napoleonic War. and they had someone who was recently passed in 2014. I think he passed away. Of a man called, oh God, is it Rick Mail? Yes.
Rick Mail. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you're talking about the adverts. Yeah. Rick Mail, who I like. You were kind of almost introducing him there as if you didn't know him, kind of for the listenership. But I think it's fair to say hero of yours and mine, Simmo?
Yes, completely. Yeah.
That Rick Mail's passing hit me hard because absolute titan of British comedy, and do beg your pardon, listeners. Some of it is, should we say, a little bit old-fashioned comedy.
Yes,
some of the themes that, probably fair to say there's some old themes running on there, but
classic, like very like his like. So what was the two things that I know him for anyway is Bottom, which is a BBC and you can actually see it on YouTube if you want to have a look.
So Bottom at the same time was really the kind of the following iteration of the really, well, I thought really famous for a preceding generation was The Young Ones. There was a sitcom called The Young Ones, which I think shot Rick Mail to fame, wasn't there?
But the thing that I really liked him in as well, which is something I think a lot of people have heard of, even if they have never watched it, is Blackadder stuff. And I think he's brilliant in those. So
yeah, and actually, weirdly, I mean, of all they have 4 series of Blackadder, maybe about 24 episodes. He only really appeared 2 or 3 times, but he was as this simply magnificent character, who then, to my mind, and people can disagree with me on this, that's fine, but to my mind, the character Lord Flashheart, who equally I can't remember the name of the author, but there was similar books. There was another book about a series of books called Flashman, who I believe Lord Flashheart was based on. But Lord Flashheart is this character who was played by Rick Mail in the Blackadder sitcoms.
Written by George MacDonald Fraser.
That's it. Yeah. So. So there was a character called Flashman who was in a series of books, historical warfare books, particularly involving British military history. And then in the Blackadder series of sitcoms, which were 70s, I believe, Simmo, I just nod. But Lord Flashheart was this swashbuckling, flamboyant, womanizing hero character. And I think, if it's not too much of a stretch, and maybe there's a little bit of a copyright infringement being inferred here, but I believe was the basis of the character for which Bombardier then had a series of adverts, which must have been in the early 20-teens or maybe the late noughties.
Yeah, so I would kind of have to agree with you because he is a very rambunctious character, and he's selling this idea of Bombardier being about kind of almost hilarity and being very English and very boisterous, and there's a little bit of womanizing in it, but there's also kind of this like modern day, so he kind of takes the mick out of it as he would because he's a comedian. So it's kind of, you have to see them, and like they are funny, they are very British, so like you have to take everything with a pinch of salt when it's British, I guess. But I think
slathered with a fair amount of sarcasm in many ways, isn't it? Because some of it is quite self-deprecating.
Yes.
Well worth going down a YouTube rabbit hole to have a look at the Bombardier adverts.
Completely.
But it was a brash, full of bravado. Well, I guess maybe the idea was he was a Bombardier, but he was almost a ranking officer in the Napoleonic Wars. And often they would do adverts coming out in support of certain British traditions, such as, I think one was Wimbledon. So there was a tennis-related one, which basically involved Rick Mail in full military dress, with an old-timey tennis racket, basically volleying actual cannonballs and sort of bombs, the old style black bombs with an actual rope fuse lit coming out of it, and it just batting them back at what presumably were French invading forces.
Yes, yeah, and then also like there's one that is like, oh, as you know, the modern woman requires men to do more than this, and he talks about how you should cook food And there's one where he literally, all he does, he goes, right, pig, come here. And he goes off scene and you just hear the squealing of a pig. And he comes back with the perfect piece, like of ribs, of pork ribs. And he puts it on a barrel that starts to sizzle as if it's like cooking it. And then all he does is pour a Bombardier on it. So it's just absolutely ridiculous. And it's just brilliant fun.
I mean, ultimately, it's a lampoon, isn't it? It's very, yes. And it's an exaggeration of old school British values of what a male hero would be. So
it's basically what the British do well is take the piss out of their own past.
It's self-deprecating humour rather than honestly taking any of these ideas seriously.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, it will give you a bit of a giggle.
So, interestingly, I thought with the kind of military theme, I'll talk about their slogan. So the slogan that they currently have on their website is "March to your own drum." We've always gone our own way, forged our own path, made our own fate, marched to our own drum. Now, this actually, and I know you know more about this, Barbs, but this actually has a lot, even though it has links to this kind of military theme, it's kind of linked to the inspiration of how Bombardier started and how it named itself, because this is something that I didn't know until Barb's kind of mentioned it to me, and it's such an interesting kind of inspiration because it's something that you don't, I don't know, it's so unique, I think, personally, for a beer.
Yeah.
Especially for a beer that is in the Marston's brand of all these beers.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because, well, there's a couple of things to say there. That, well, first of all, what we were just talking about with the character played by Rick Mail is very exaggerated. However, there was a particular man who, supposedly was the inspiration for Bombardier, and in many ways you think that we made those jokes about we alluded to the jokes about this sort of exaggerated form of a male role model, but this was a real guy. And also what was funny is I don't know if this was intentional or not. I'm sure that Bombardier and the Eagle Brewery will tell you that it was, but when we say marching to the beat of your own drum, the inspiration, a chap called William Thomas Wells, known as Bombardier Billy Wells, was sorry, getting this out is one of the J. Arthur Rank gong men.
Nice.
You may remember from the films.
This is old school films, isn't it? This is
old school films. You know, when you're going through the credits at the start, and you get the little bit of information about the producers or the director and the company that's invested. You know, when you get your MGM, Metro Goldwyn Mayer, all that sort of stuff. But basically, in the old days, there's J. Arthur Rank, and they have. I'm sure the listeners will remember this, but the Gong Men, and there was basically a huge muscular chap in what was basically a loincloth,
tighty whitey,
striking a gong. I've got a set of those. Striking the gong to make the big gong noise. And Bombardier Billy Wells was one of the originals.
Nice.
He also, I tell you a little bit more about him. He was part of a gunner in the Royal Artillery back in 1906. So slightly before the Great War. So I think he was, must recheck my notes, but he was out in Pakistan. And also he was a British Empire champion boxer.
Nice.
But between, in the 19 teens, basically. So there is a little bit of material out there on him. Although I think also that the other thing that they would say in the background, Eagle Brewery and Bombardier themselves, is it's also that marching to the beat of your own drum is about not following fads and fashion. And I suppose actually that is quite poignant with the type of beer that we're drinking at the moment and what's out there, because maybe that's a good point for us to start talking, Simmo, about what the liquid's like, as they say.
I mean, I'm actually very surprised. So it's British ale, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's 5.2%. It's pretty hefty.
Yeah.
And I was kind of a bit like, I didn't expect it to be that strong. I genuinely didn't expect it. Now,
It's happened again, Simmo.
What's that?
5.2, did you say?
Yes, mate.
Can you see my label? 4.7.
Oh, well, there you go.
You are clearly made of sterner stuff than me.
No, I think this is generally just, Australians get away with more. No, I'm joking. I genuinely think that this is an ongoing trend. I think British beer is just getting tanked a little bit because of Australia had a big thing where they heavily taxed everything. So beer is actually more expensive here, generally speaking, because they wanted to take away from the culture of, because obviously Australia was synonymous with boozing, essentially, at one point. And I think they wanted to take away from that, and I think that's valid. And by doing that, by making it more expensive, you would kind of limit that. And I think the UK, it seems like that's happening quite a lot. But mine's 5.2, yours is 4.7. What an interesting thing. But I mean, one thing I would have to say is the colour is dark. It's like a kind of, it is amber. It is a dark amber. It kind of reminds me, it's a bit lighter than a Hobgoblin.
Yeah, so I quite like that there's a label of, I find myself just describing what I would normally call as just an ale. The more I think about it, the more I see that they're actually sort of described on their own bottles and labels as amber beer.
Yeah.
Which, again, by maybe a more universal definition, is now an amber beer, what I would call an old ale.
I think that's just it sounds stupid, but I think by putting amber beer, you kind of advertise to more people, because beer is just more generic, isn't it? What do you think of the logo?
Lovely. Bold, as I suppose it should be. A big letter B. I've got, sorry for the slang. Not very good slang. Mad props for anyone who it's very rare, I think, for beer labels to actually put hops on the label. Yeah. So that B has got wings. Wings makes sense. Yeah, if it's going to subscribe to that sort of the preconceptions of a bomber, something going to be up in the air. But it's got hops sticking out to one side. So I guess you know what's in the bottle.
Like the old logo used to have the St George's flag, and it's
still very red, white, and blue, isn't it?
But yes, it is. But I still think that they're veering towards America a little bit, because it's a bit more modern looking in terms of the way the logo doesn't. For instance, I don't know if that logo makes me think 1700s and Napoleonic War kind of feel.
That's true, but as we touched on earlier, they've actually, in comparison to a lot of beers, particularly the ones we've done recently that have been around hundreds of years, these guys haven't, have they? So is it maybe heritage by design and heritage as agreed by committee?
I mean, I'm not sure if yours is the same, and I love the fact that mine has it. But the cap is just a GB flag, which is fantastic.
The Union Jack. I like that, yeah. Mine are different, I'm sure, but mine is not the Union Jack. It is the Bombardier Beer.
Do you know what that is? I reckon they're trying to sell it as, Aussies have a British beer. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, like you've had something luxuriously imported from a very long way away.
Yeah, but flavour...
Brewed in Bedford, sold by the company in Milan, if the label's to be believed.
Mine's Italy as well. So what do you think of the flavour? So again, I'm going to do the classic, Barber. I'm going to read to you.
Well, actually, let me chuck out. Well, I'm sure I'm not going to be able to. And if I was able to give you exactly that, then maybe there's a job opportunity for me in beers. But for me, this is in comparison to something you and I recently tried, which described itself as nutty. For me, this is nutty. This is ultimately because that dark. I always associate that darker colour with a malty beer. I'm sure it's going to say that it's got a hoppy finish in there as well. But this is a malty, brave, full-bodied, and it's probably going to then also say, because of the colour, that it's got a toffee note as well, I would think. But you tell me what I'm meant to be thinking.
Do you know what?
And I'll confirm.
I'm going to tell you, Barbs. Fair props. What is it? Mad
fair
props?
What's the
mad props
say? Or whatever fair you dues?
Say. Yo, mad props, bro. Basically, a fruity aroma.
Yeah.
And rich malty taste.
Oh, yeah.
Provides a crisp, mouth-watering beer. Now, I like that because for me, this is, I think if you wanted to try a very simple British ale, I think this is this is a safe starter. I don't think it's particularly unique, but it's got a decent fizz to it, I think, weirdly in your mouth. And I think it is easy to consume. I think it's something that I don't think is an issue. If you had a couple of these, it's not hard. I think some ales can be quite heavy and you don't want too many. But I think this is a very nice, subtle, and I think you are right. You feel the malts completely. It's very malty, and thing is though, I think we're both biased because we're both from the UK, but
and we're both absolutely adore Rick Mail, so therefore anything that he peddled was just going to be perfect. But I would say if you want to try something that is a kind of a gateway to British beer, I think this is an easy one to have because it's not too strong flavoured in any aspect. I find I don't think it's overselling itself when it describes itself as a British ale. I find it as more. These aren't real words. This is more archetypal of what I think a British ale is like, rather than in comparison, for instance, to I think we've recently tasted Tetley's.
The one thing I do want to kind of mention on actually is, even though it's not very old, this has been brewed in the same place since its
inception
in Bedford. And interestingly, the claims that it is British, weirdly to me, I need to find out about this Milano, Italy thing, because it claims to be because on the website they do talk about the fact that the ingredients are 100% British. So
I figured it was brewed in Bedford still, but the Carlsberg Marston's Brewing Co. have got their head office in Milan. Is that maybe?
Probably, or that's where they distribute it. But it says on their website, the whole point of this is that it was English, right? So originally, before it became the British Amber Beer, it was the English beer. So it was famously, proudly English, and it was all the adverts were stupendously English, right? And it was all about the fact that all the ingredients that were that created this beer were from England. So if you push that, you can't call yourself British if you don't use British ingredients, and that's what it says on the tin. It says it uses 100% British ingredients. So as long as you keep that going, then I say fair play to say you're British. I mean, I understand that technically, if they are English still, why have you changed it to English? But I think it's more sellable as British. I think the British flag is more sellable than the English flag. So
easily more recognisable. But ultimately, modern beer with pretty good taste.
Give it a go.
Fairly prevalent. So I mean, to that end, I'm sure they had an advert where it was "Drink of England." It was their thing. Was their catchphrase. Drink of England. Either way,
I want to find this now.
These days, in their Twitter dalliances, they've got 16,700 followers. In Instagram, do we think higher or lower, Simmo? Higher or lower?
So what was the first one? Sorry.
16,700 on Twitter. What do you think for Instagram?
I'm gonna go lower because Twitter's high.
Well, Simmo, you were right to do that because their Instagram following, according to latest reporting, 606. So far quieter.
So basically, I was bang on, just like Rick Mail.
You were bang on.
Bang on.
Was that was their old phrase, wasn't it? Yeah. We should have done more of the voice. Right, well done. Thanks, everyone. Catch you next time.
Bombardier!
And that's all we have time for this week's episode of the I'll Try That podcast. And so from me, Joe, Rich,
Barber,
and Simmo,
goodbye. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter,
I'll try that podcast.com,
and watch us on YouTube.
Goodbye now.